Welcome to the Founder Hour podcast. Before we get into the episode, just a quick word about our sponsor, Outer. You know I've raved about Outer before, and I love my Outer sofa, outdoor dining table, and chairs. I've had them for over a year, and let me tell you, they've been through everything from rainstorms to scorching sun and still look brand new. That's because Outer makes outdoor furniture that's actually designed for the outdoors. From using incredibly durable and sustainable materials to developing innovative solutions like the Outer Shell Cover, which protects my sofa and dining table against dust, debris, and dirt. No more soggy cushions or dusty tabletops. My Outer setup is always clean, dry, and ready to be enjoyed anytime I want. Head to liveouter.com/thefounderhour to see Outer's range of outdoor furniture, fire pits, and accessories. The Founder Hour listeners get an exclusive 10% off for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. So elevate your outdoor space with Outer. That's liveouter.com/thefounderhour. Here we go. Amy Liu, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You've obviously built an incredible company and had an incredible career in beauty, but I want to kind of take it back to Amy the person and talk about your early days a little bit, because I think it really sets the tone for how you ended up where you ended up. So tell me a little bit about like where you grew up, what young Amy was like, what did you enjoy doing?
Yeah, so I was born in Minnesota. My parents immigrated from Taiwan. I was born in Minnesota, grew up in, I would say, inland LA mostly. Mm-hmm. So they moved at some point when I was like 5 years old. And so I very much feel like I am Asian American, and I very much feel like a Californian in a big way. Growing up, I had two, obviously, parents, a mom and a dad. My mom had a job she was an auditor. And honestly, I still don't really know what that means. But she left at the same time every day, came home at the same time every day. She never talked about her job.
Yep. Did she work for like the IRS or the city? Or?
No, she worked for like, Kaiser Permanente and SoCal Edison and Bank of America and like really large corporate companies. But it just never felt like it was like her passion. It seemed like something that she did. And on the flip side of that, I had my dad, who was and is an entrepreneur. He was a property developer. And it's funny because he would tell you, so he was very much an entrepreneur and so passionate about what he did. Like I remember being on the weekends, we would go, he did a lot of commercial real estate development, but small, like 3-story buildings, or he would do like small scale condo developments.
Yep.
And on the weekends, we would go look at spec houses, and, and if we would go to Vegas, and he would be like looking at the elevator, like he was so into what he did. But what
was his story? Like, did he just start the business kind of when he moved here?
So he came here for a graduate school. He went to University of Illinois, and he got graduate degrees in like architecture, engineering, et cetera. And what he would tell you is that he was an entrepreneur, but that he did it because he had to. He wasn't doing it because he thought it was so sexy and exciting. Of course.
Yeah, back then it was like born out of necessity.
It was born out of necessity, especially as an immigrant, right? Where English was a second language. Right. And he didn't feel like he could kind of make it in the corporate world on his own. And so just like in a company environment. So instead he became an entrepreneur, but then even then he felt pretty relegated to working with basically other Chinese people because English was his second language. Right. And he was successful, but then at some point he felt like he hit a ceiling here. And he actually, since the 90s, since I was in high school, he moved to China. And so now he lives in China, and he continued his career here because he really felt like he could only do so much here. And so it's funny because growing up, I always thought like, I want to do what he's doing. He's so into it. Like he's so invested. Not in the property development way. Like I've never wanted to be an architect, but just I wanted to feel that sense of passion and that sense of every day you wake up and like, this is what you're doing. You're so excited.
Like that flow state.
That I really felt like I watched him have. But at the same time, he was like, don't do this. This is too hard. Go work for someone else and have like a cushy life and not have it be so hard.
He figured like, because you're growing up here and all that stuff, you might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit easier on you to like,
I feel like every immigrant story, right, is where your parents move here because they want you to have a better life than the one that they had. And I think he felt like he had worked really hard to be able to like, listen, I was lucky he paid for me to go to college, and that I could go get like a nice job and not have to work so hard.
Yes.
And so I did that. I graduated from UCSD. I got a job. My first job was in consulting, which was at Accenture.
I saw you studied economics. What was the thought behind that? Like you might go work in like banking or something?
No, I think honestly, my path was really linear at first. And it was really like, I would say I was just trying not to make wrong decisions.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily trying to make right ones. I just was so worried about being successful in other people's eyes. And I was so worried about building up my resume in a way that other people would think well of me, including my parents, frankly, that I think I made a lot of decisions, honestly, for my whole life up until I did this, that were pretty less for me and more for them and for society and the way that I thought other people thought of me.
Yeah.
And so consulting was the job that everybody wanted. That was, you had a good salary coming out. It was not the wrong thing to do. And
it's interesting because I'm the same way. I think, my parents are also immigrants, and growing up, you maybe show all these interests in different things and you're like, I want to do something that I'm passionate about, whatever. And then you become this age where you realize, or I guess maybe our generation, it's like when we're younger, we're told either by our parents or society that we have to go down a certain path to have security in life, and that maybe some of the things we're passionate about aren't great careers, like art, or like I remember back then it was like, do not study art, do not go to
also like art. I didn't know growing up. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Claremont where the colleges are. Yeah. And I didn't know that these were real jobs. Like I didn't know anybody who was an entrepreneur or founder. I knew people who were doctors and lawyers and teachers, etc. Nor did I even know that working in the beauty industry was a job because I didn't see it. Nobody around me had that job. I thought you could only do that on TV. Like people who lived in New York could go work in beauty. I didn't know that those were real things that people actually made money doing. Yeah. And I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
So I think early on, you asked me like, what was younger Amy like? I think younger Amy was so scared and so worried about what other people thought that I was so fixated on branding, I guess is probably the right word. Yeah. So whether it was like what college I was going to, what grad school I was going to.
How come you didn't go to the colleges in Claremont?
Oh my God, I wanted to get out of there.
Really? You just didn't want to? Okay.
There was never even a consideration. And when you grow up in a town, you don't really, I didn't even know actually how good the colleges in Claremont are.
I was about to just say, like, growing up, I never had that on my radar because I didn't think like liberal arts colleges were. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to USC or like one of these large. But then I, like the age I'm at now, like I have friends that went there and they have such great relationships with the other students. It's like these small knit.
Yeah.
Which is really
I actually
cool.
married, my husband went to Pomona College and I had no idea what a great school it was. And he has so much love for Pomona College.
Yeah. Yeah. So you study economics, you do consulting. What was that time of your life like being in like consulting? Did you enjoy it?
I mostly did it because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think something that was really formative for me in my younger years was really just this idea that I did not know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to, again, not mess up. And so I tried to pick things that would give me exposure and an opportunity to learn different things. Yeah. So consulting at the time, my projects were everything from like, I worked on Amgen, but I also worked for like the state of New Mexico, working for the Child Support Services. So it was like kind of anything and everything. And I think the thing that I think has really been good for me in my career is I'm just genuinely a very curious person. And so I kind of feel like, and I feel like this even when I hire people, like just smart enough is, everyone, there's a lot of people who are smart enough, but you have to just want to be like curious enough and learn something. So then you can kind of do anything at that point. Right. But I think consulting for me was that first bit. But I very quickly realized after being there for 2 years that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So frankly, I went to business school in an effort to give myself to press pause, give myself a chance to figure out what I wanted to do and to change my career.
Yeah. And I know you went to USC, which is also my alma mater. And I'm curious what your experience was like, not just at USC, but like getting an MBA? Like, was it worth it for you?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you did get that experience there?
I think it was worth it for me. But again, I went 2 years out of college. I went when I actually wish now, looking back on it, I was in such a rush to do things. And I was in such a rush to, I don't know, be quote unquote successful that I didn't learn as much as I could have had I had more experience. Like if I went back today, I think business school would make so much more sense for me.
Yeah.
But at the time,
all those case studies, you'd be like, I've seen this.
Yeah.
I know what this is.
Well, you would just be able to have context and be able to apply it. Where like at the time, I didn't frankly have that. Mm-hmm. And so I was the youngest person in business school at USC at the time. It was a great experience for me because I feel like I got exactly what I was looking for out of it, which was I changed my career. Mm-hmm. So my first year in business school, I sat down with my career counselor. And by the way, this was what I considered my like quarter life crisis. Like I was reading, what should I do with my life and what color is my parachute? And I was doing all these exercises and trying to figure out like, what is it that I want if it's not consulting? It's one of the things I've seen.
What were some of those exercises? Can you kind of walk me through those? Because I'm curious, because there's so many people I'm sure listening too that maybe are in a position that like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm in a job that might be a dead end job. Like I don't really have direction.
Well, let me tell you the thing that freaked me out the most is that by the way, I weirdly love commencement speeches. And so I would listen to commencement speeches all the time. And everyone says like, don't do a job, do your passion, do something you love. And I was like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. Like,
it's a really hard thing to know. Like, it's not something that just hits you.
No. And I still remember this in college when my best friend, who's still one of my best friends today, from the day I met her, she was like, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And by the way, she's a doctor today.
Yeah.
But like she knew
I envy those people sometimes.
I envied her so much because I thought like, if I knew what I want to do, I could tell you all of the steps
you'll figure it out.
To get there.
Like, I know exactly what I have to do and I'll do it. Yeah.
And I was so worried that I was taking steps that had nothing to do with anything. And now in hindsight, now that I'm much older, I can look back on it and be like, oh, it all made sense. Why was I so anxious? Why was I so worried that like the path I was taking was definitely a little bit more windy, but it still made a lot of sense in the end. So I guess for the
looking
people,
back, speaking of commencement speeches, Steve Jobs' famous one at
Stanford. I literally just listened to that again recently.
Yeah, he talks about looking back and connecting the dots, which is exactly what you're saying, basically.
100%. And it all makes sense, but it may not make sense in the moment. So in terms of like the questions, a lot of those questions are around like, what is it that you feel passionate about? What are the things that you care about? What do you like to do? I always think about that, like the intersection of what are you good at and what do you like to do? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that is where you'll find success because...
I'm assuming you've read Ikigai or know about Ikigai?
I don't know what Ikigai is.
Oh, really? Okay. I have the book somewhere here. I'll show you, but it's basically like a double Venn diagram. Actually, we had Vicky Tai of Touch on the show.
I love Vicky.
She's the one that originally brought that up. This was years ago, and I'm like, what is this? So I bought the book and I read it and it was fascinating. Have you heard of blue zones? Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically it's like, it kind of correlates with the story of like, in blue zones, folks find their ikigai, and that's why they really live long, is because it's the intersection of what you're good at, what the world needs, what you could be paid to do, and what you love.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And it's like the intersection of that. So you kind of do this exercise. I've tried it, and it's still hard for me to like figure out the middle part. Like I haven't really been able to deduce like this is exactly, what it is for me, but I'm sure a lot of people have gotten a lot out of it. So anyways, you talked about it. And so I thought maybe.
But that was definitely the headset I was in. And I think on a really basic level, what I came up with is I think the things that I find interesting are the ones where when I was at Accenture, I was doing a lot of programming, which I couldn't see in the real world, right? Like it didn't affect my everyday. It wasn't something I could share with my friends or see in a consumer way. And so I kind of distilled it to the things I was looking for was I really like women. I really am someone, I was in a sorority. I really value my friendships with my girlfriends. I love that side of things. And I love women as consumers too. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to do something that had to do with being in the mindset of women. And I wanted it to be something where I could see it in real life. And specifically, I loved beauty and fashion. I just didn't know how to get into those worlds. I didn't know what that would be like.
But tell me about how you even became interested in that. Was it just when you were a kid, it was around and you naturally just had an affinity towards beauty and like what was happening in the fashion space? Or was there like something that you remember, like a moment or something that was like, that's interesting?
I don't have a specific moment. And I would say that oddly, I'm actually not someone who is obsessed with makeup either. So it's not like some people, there's girls on my team, and I love this about them. Like you can put them inside of a Sephora and they cannot hold themselves back. They just want to buy everything. Right. I feel almost none of that. I love beauty and I love the industry, but I love it because it's my community and I love the way it makes women feel. And I think that was actually the through line that came through for me, because I'm actually not like it's the actual product. It could kind of be a lot of things, I think, for me.
Yeah.
As long as it was something that I felt like in the industry, we often talk about how when you're making makeup, you're not like curing cancer, right? So sometimes when things are stressful, inevitably somebody always says, guys, let's all calm down. We're not curing cancer. And I always say, we may not be curing cancer, but one, we don't need to give people cancer. We make products that are clean.
Right. Yeah.
But two, like I actually do think that what we do is very important. The products that we are creating and selling, if it can really make you feel more confident about your skin, and a lot of people, a lot of women, people in general, I would say, when they wear makeup, when they put skincare on, feel like their best self. And your ability to feel like your best self, be confident and go out into the world is hugely imperative. Like it takes away the fear, and fear is, I think, the thing that makes us not able to be our best selves and achieve the things that we want to do. So I actually think that what we do is super important. And I think for me, I've had very troubled skin for the majority of my life. So from the time I was graduating from college, I've had eczema. And I don't know if you know much about, you don't seem to have any skin issues.
I mean, you like dry skin and stuff? Or is it
eczema is more intense than dry skin.
Yeah.
It is almost like, and sometimes it does present as super dry skin that then becomes a rash, that then becomes, it can become weepy. It can become, it's basically, I would call it like rosacea, psoriasis, eczema, are even acne. Honestly, these are all forms of inflammation.
Yeah.
And when unchecked, and if you can't maintain them, your skin barrier breaks, you get rashes, and then it just exacerbates from there.
Yeah. And you hadn't been able to find like a solution for that from a young age, or?
Well, I had eczema on my face and I had it on my hands, and at times I've had it on my legs. So they say you get it in almost like your crevices, so your armpits, behind your knees, that type of a thing.
Right.
And that's definitely how it was for me. And for me, it actually gets a lot worse when I feel stressed out too. So the trick, I don't know, nobody knows the cause of these things, but I can tell you the things that make it worse. Okay. So for me, it's stress, poor sleeping habits, poor eating. Basically, your 20s are not very good for it's like going out late.
You noticed a pattern, like if you were feeling stressed, you're like, oh, sorry. If you were having bad eczema, you're like, oh, I must have been stressed like earlier today or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's that / like, I think, again, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what causes it, but the frustrating thing about it is if you go to a doctor, they're like, sorry, there's no cure, and I don't know why you have it, but it sucks. And so the only thing you can do is try to learn how to manage it. And so for me, I was always trying to cover it up, because the thing that I, really wanted to do was make it so other people couldn't see it, because I felt so insecure about it. And I think that was kind of the genesis for Tower 28, because I felt like there's a lot of skincare in the world that is made for sensitive skin, but in the color cosmetics world, there aren't a lot of products that are made to be safe for sensitive skin and highly efficacious and clean. And then I would say that the last kind of pillar to that is what I consider to be an affordable price point.
Yeah.
And so that's really what made me start Tower 20, but that was much later.
Yeah. So you spent like, I think 20 years in the beauty industry.
It's 21 now.
20. Yeah. So, or I guess, a little bit less than that before you started Tower 28. So what did you, I know you were doing marketing, kind of share a little bit about, I guess, what that experience was like working at these different beauty brands. What did you see? What did you learn that eventually helped you when you started Tower 28?
So I graduated from USC. I double majored in marketing and in entrepreneurship. I was in a club, which I think they may have had the undergrad version of this too, the EVMA. the Entrepreneurship Venture Management
Okay, I was president
Association.
of the USC Entrepreneur Club, which is the undergraduate entrepreneur
Oh, got it.
club. So,
okay, so we had something,
yeah.
again, a long time ago.
Yep.
We had a program called, or a club called the EVMA, and I was in that. And when I was in business school, I got my first internship at Maybelline. Then my second year, I started, do you know who Dean Ellis is? Jim Ellis?
Yes.
Dean Ellis, such a fan of his. And he called me into his office when I was at USC, and he said, hey, I'm going to go play golf with this guy named Dean Factor, who is the founder of Smashbox Cosmetics. And he's like, can you, like, I just want to make sure I don't look dumb on the golf course. Can you tell me a little bit about Smashbox? And I honestly did maybe 10 minutes of research. I was like, this is what they do. This is where they're sold. This is how they position themselves. Here you go. He went and played golf, came back, and he was like, you need to go. He gave me a business card, and he was like, call them. I think they have a job for you. And I just started my second year. I called, I interviewed, they hired me so quickly.
Wow.
And I started as their full-time. So then my second year, I started full-time as a director of international marketing, and I became a PM student at USC. And then the day I graduated from USC, literally I started flying around. I went to Singapore almost like literally the next day. And so that was my first real job in beauty. So that was a long time ago. I went from there. I went from there, and then I went to Kate Somerville Skincare.
Yep.
And I did that when we were first time in retail. So Kate had just brought on private equity for the first time. She and the private equity team hired an entire executive team at the same time. I actually was not hired as the head of marketing. I was hired as a director, but it was like 2008, and my financial crisis was happening. My boss, for whatever reason, got fired within the first month I was there. And I was like, just let it be me. I want to do it. Let me be the head of marketing. You don't have to pay me anymore. And they were like, great price. It's you.
Right, because they probably fired or laid that person off because of how much they were making. It was probably not, I'm assuming.
I don't know. I mean, I never, honestly, she just like dipped out one day and I never saw her again. Right. So I never even had a conversation.
Yeah. They probably thought they had to pay this high price for another head of marketing. You're just like, I'll do it.
Yeah. And they were paying me like beans, but they were like, great.
Yeah.
And
but
so
you felt like it'd be good for your career to
But
just
I thought it was,
role.
and honestly, it was great for my career. So I went from Smashbox to Kate Somerville to Josie Maran, all of them being indie, founder-based beauty brands in LA, which at the time, like certainly back in the day of Smashbox, it was really like department store brands. So it was Estee Lauder, Clinique, Shiseido, like really big companies. And so this was kind of the beginning of that. And I felt like for me, I was always risk averse. I always wanted to do this. And I told everybody I wanted to do it. But I also said, I'm just going to learn on someone else's dime. Yeah. And so I felt like if you look at the companies I went to, the companies got smaller, but my role got bigger and I got a closer seat at the table. And that's what I was really looking for. But then I had kids. So I was at Josie. I had 2 kids at the time, and I just felt overwhelmed. I had, I don't know if you know a lot of people with kids, but I actually think this is a big problem for women in general in our society, is that women are kind of hitting their stride in their career around the same time that biologically we need to be having children because like, let's face it, our bodies are actually meant to have kids younger. It's quite hard on your body to have kids. And so if you look at that and then you take women and you pull them out of the workforce because it is so expensive to have childcare, certainly in a city like LA, right? Like to have children, to whatever all of these things are, it's just really hard, frankly. And so this is something I actually care a lot about.
And it's something that I feel like maybe we don't even talk enough about. But like, I don't know, like what has to happen there? I mean, really, is there like any way?
I think some of it is we just have to like normalize like that it's okay, right? So it's like
exactly. Like if someone is out of the workforce for a year or 2 even because they're having kids, like that should be like a good thing. Like because
to me, I would a million times over, I would rather have like this idea of like quiet quitting really bothers me. Like the idea that people would just stay in a job that like not be 100%. I would rather like you go do you and then come back when you're ready and you're fresh. And I would rather have somebody who like went and like took care of their kids or did whatever they needed to do, because we all have personal stuff.
Yep.
And then like be ready for it, because, you know, like I think it's too hard to do so many things at once. And I think that's what I essentially did. So I was really unhappy at the time. I felt like I don't know if you've ever had that, but I felt like I was doing lots of things, but not, and like so busy, but not still, and not feeling not my best self in anything I was doing.
Yeah, you were just sort of on the surface of everything you were doing. Like you didn't really feel like you were going too deep into one of the things.
I just sort of felt like I sucked. You know what I mean? But yet I was like from morning to night, just I felt like I was grinding too, right?
Yeah.
Like and not super. And when I'm with my kids, I'm not present. And when I'm at work, I'm thinking about, you know what I mean?
I'm curious at that stage in your life too. So when you're younger and you're kind of thinking about what should I do for my career, I think so you decided like, oh, this is what I'm passionate about, is like this beauty industry and all that stuff. But I think once you get a little bit deeper in your career, you hit another crisis, which is like, what am I working towards at this point? Am I trying to be the CEO of the company I'm working at?
Totally.
Am I trying to learn enough? And like, do you have this really clear goal of like getting enough experience and then just pivoting and starting your own thing? Like, but sometimes people don't have that. And so I think you hit this another wall, and it's not really like a glass ceiling of like work. It's more of like your personal glass ceiling of like, where am I going with this? So obviously you have purpose in your life because you have kids and you want to be a great mother, but then also with work, what were you thinking in terms of what you were working towards? Did you know that you were going to leave and start another company or start a company?
Oh, I wish I could tell you it was that deep.
Yeah.
I think at that point I was just like treading to stay above water, right? Like I didn't want to lose this thing that I felt like I had worked so hard at, which was my career. And I felt like it was something that it was a huge part of my identity. And so I quit. And when I stopped working I quit working at Josie, and I stayed at home with my 2 kids. I had a 3rd child. I remodeled a house. Like I was really busy, but that whole time, and in the end, I took 4 years off from working full time. I consulted and I did other things and I kept my toe in the water, but I felt really, I don't know if the right word is stress, but I felt like a crisis of identity, to be honest with you. I was so worried I wouldn't be able to get in when I wanted to. I think when you have kids, you're meeting people a lot of times for the first time, whether you're talking about preschool or kindergarten or whatever. It's a new community for you. And people in America, I think this is so part of our society. People meet you and they're like, what do you do?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the first question.
And like people size you, like, you know, and implicit in that is like,
are you worth my time right now?
100%. And I was like, oh, but want to know what I used to do? You know, and I could feel myself being insecure like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And so basically I did that and now if I could do anything, actually, if I could go back to that time, the only thing, and again, this is back to your connect the dots of like Steve Jobs. Like, I just wish I enjoyed that time more, that I didn't worry so much about like coming back into the business, because obviously I've now done that. But at the time, I couldn't have known.
Well, once you realize everything turned out okay.
Yeah.
Actually, everything turned out great. Then you want to go back and be like, I wish I knew that back then.
100%. Like, but I think I wished at the time I was so worried about becoming irrelevant. I was so worried about my skills. Like, the world changes really fast, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, quite honestly, I didn't even have an Instagram account until I started Tower 28, because I was like, just not like, I was taking care of kids and I just wasn't in that mode at the time.
You don't want to post all your kids on Instagram?
No, I'm not really. And in general on social, I have to learn how to be. I'm not someone who, I'm public in a certain way. I quite enjoy having conversations with people like you.
Yeah.
But I don't, take pictures of myself getting ready. I don't, I think we all do what we're comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I for 4 years I consulted. I was at home taking care of my kids. And then I essentially wanted to go back to work once my youngest one got into preschool. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I want to go back to work. I met with a friend of mine from business school, and we were talking, and I was like, these are the things I'm looking for. I want something funded. I want something senior. I want something where I have equity and upside. And he was like, or you want to do something on your own because you've been saying this for such a long time.
And what year is this, just for context?
This is 2018.
18, okay.
2018. Also, I was turning 40.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you're turning 40. Either you're going to do it or you're not. And I was like, wow, that was like kind of like the swift kick in the butt that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, he ended up becoming my first money in. Because I was like, great, easy for you to say.
Yep.
I don't have money. I don't have a partner. And he said to me, and this is the thing that I will never, I will always be so grateful to him for, is he was like, if you don't have money, that's fine. He's like, if you have money, you don't need a partner because you can hire people.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I still don't have money. Like, we just in LA, I bought my first house at like basically 40.
Yeah.
We were sending 3 of our kids to private school, which I recognize is like champagne problems.
Yep.
But he was like, then why don't you raise money? I was like, I don't know how to raise money. I didn't think that was something everyday people could do. I didn't know anything about private equity. I had seen like in the news, you saw like Glossier and Away and like these like, it was in that girl boss era.
I remember. Yeah, I had Sophia Amoruso on the show recently too.
But
so
I wasn't, you
weren't in that
like,
scene. Yeah,
I was an employee.
Right.
You know what I mean? And at the time, I was like a stay-at-home mom. So I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he offered to invest half of whatever I needed.
And what did he do for work?
So he was my co-president of the EVMA that we just talked about.
Yep.
But after we graduated from business school, he started a SaaS company and sold it.
Okay, nice. So he had some money. He wanted to just angel invest. It wasn't like he was working at a VC firm or something.
But I didn't know he had sold his company.
Okay.
So like we were just in earnest having a conversation. I didn't even think about doing any of this.
Yeah.
And turns out, which maybe you already know this, but I didn't know this, when you sell a company, you can defer capital gains if you invest in something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's like a 1031 exchange in real estate. Yeah.
Correct. The same thing as with a house. And he was like, he only had a certain amount of time that he could do this. And so he was like, if you can, I'll give you the money, half of whatever you need, if you can raise the other half in 30 days. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's a short timeline.
Totally. Yeah. Especially when I didn't have an idea.
Because you got to do a rodeo. You got to go to all these like firms. And be like,
and I didn't know anything about any of this. I was like, I don't even know what terms look like. Yep. I don't know. And so he basically wrote terms, gave them to me, and he's like, this is what you do. Like, go, don't take my word for it. Go ask people if these are good terms and if this is what you should do. And so I called basically like a few friends that I knew just were even invested in things. And they weren't necessarily like, I called a guy who does like private equity, but for tech or whatever. And they would just push me to somebody else, but it was kind of like following the cookie trail where like pretty soon I was talking to people. But the truth is the people who invested in me were my friends. When they say friends and family, like it really was my friends.
And did you know what you're building at that point? Or like, had you already come up with kind of no? So you were just like, I want to start a business. I need money. I don't know what yet, but
no, I put together a deck and it was always going to be, the obvious thing was always going to be beauty. I actually, prior to this, I tried to start 3 other companies with other people. Like side hustle wise.
What were some of those things? I'm just curious.
So when I was during the 4-year period, I actually had interviewed for a job with T3, which is a hair tool company. And it just wasn't the right timing for me. So I didn't come back. And then I saw Kent, who's the founder. I saw him actually at the park with his kids and I was with my kids. And he was like, why didn't you come back? And I was like, I didn't come back because it's just not the right time. And I was like, and we were talking. I was like, I've actually always wanted to do something on my own. And so he had at the time made a shower attachment for to filter out all the yucky stuff from the water, which is actually quite hard on your hair, like calcification, all these things. And so he was like, listen, it was his idea. He was like, I've always thought it would be such a good idea to do this for bathtubs, for babies. And I was like, I was totally in that mode of like baby and everything.
Yeah.
And so we actually did start a thing where we went through all of the R&D. He was like, I'll be the money, you be the muscle, and let's go do this. We're still actually pretty good friends today, but that failed because essentially there's a reason no one makes it. Like if you think about your Brita filter, think about how slowly that water drips out.
Oh yeah.
And you can't, the water coming out of a shower can be moderated, but the water coming out of a bathtub, people don't moderate how fast it is because it doesn't really matter, right? You'll fill it up to the level you're going to fill it up to.
Yeah.
So anyways, that didn't that didn't work. I also started another, like the little bra company was saying that I did in business school, which was like, whatever. There were a number of things I did, but it wasn't until this, which was what I was doing was I was trying to attach myself to people that I thought were really smart, and it was their idea. And until I did my own thing where I was like kind of betting on myself, that was when things changed for me.
Customers are rushing to your store. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/founderhour. Once again, go to shopify.com/founderhour to take your retail business to the next level today.
I think that's something that sometimes could be a struggle for someone who is entrepreneurial or has like these entrepreneurial aspirations, which is like, well, if I don't have an idea that I'm super like into like 100%, then what is the next best thing? And maybe, go work for someone that you respect and admire or whatever. But I think it's just like coming to that point where there is something that you're so passionate about that you have to go after it.
Yeah,
You know you have the skills to do it. You know how you have the ambition. It's just you don't know which direction to point it to because you don't know what to pursue like in terms of ideas.
Well, I think the story I told myself was, especially at that point in my life, I was a really good number two. I felt like I was really good at making other people's dreams come true. I was really good at telling other people's stories. And the idea that I would like turn that towards myself was a really hard one. And honestly, one I feel like I'm even just still trying to figure out now.
Yeah.
So yes, it was always beauty. It was always going to be that. But I think turning it towards other people was kind of the natural inclination I had. So my first idea was actually to make a beauty brand that was targeted towards, I was looking at my daughters, and my daughters were like kissing me to get the transfer for my lipstick because they wanted to I wouldn't let them wear lipstick.
Right. So they found a hack.
Totally. And at the time, liquid lips were really popular, which I don't know if you know what that is, but liquid lips are essentially probably not very good for you in terms of like if something purports to stay on your lips for like 24 hours, it is not made out of things that are
healthy
necessarily. And so that was kind of the first idea I had is I was like, well, what happens when my kids get bigger and so my kids like me have eczema. I have two daughters. I have one son. And I thought like, what if I could make products that were like not only safe for sensitive skin, but also clean, meaning non-toxic. And so that was the original concept, but I wanted it to be actually for younger people because it was more about them than it was about me. And then I thought like, but wait a minute, I'm eating this. Like they say if you put lipstick on or you wear lip product that you eat like 7 pounds a year, which I don't know if that's true, but it kind of makes sense. And so I thought like, okay, well maybe it's more that. But honestly, like things for me.
Can you put like nutrients in it, like vitamins?
Yeah.
I mean, like, it might as well, right? If
might as well. Yeah. I mean, now we put actually our lip jelly is made out of like 5 different oils, like an apricot kernel oil and an avocado oil. So yes, we do those types of things now. But it's interesting because so even when I originally started the brand, it was like not about me and my experience. And when I started meeting with editors and they were like, well, why do you care so much about sensitive skin? I was like, oh, and I told them about my eczema and they were like, that's actually the story. Like, why are you not telling that part of the story? So even from the beginning, we made the products the way that we do, which is we're the only beauty brand that's 100% compliant with the National Eczema Association. Because that was something I was looking at to figure out, I don't know, what do I wash my hands with? What kind of detergent should I use? And so I was using that as a resource. And so I used it to develop the products. But honestly, not until we kind of like put my story in it, or I would even say it's just the authenticity of it. Like, why do you actually care about this? Then that was when things started to really move a little bit.
You know, often when someone has had so much experience and maybe even gone to business school and learned, sort of the business school side of, business, which is obviously different than, someone maybe who's like 18, 19, 21 years old, starting a business, that naivete that you haven't really like experienced much of anything really, and you're just kind of figuring it out as you go. That person might look at a business idea and just like tear it apart, right? Basically, like you do like the SWOT analysis and be like, what's out there? And, it's like a saturated market. Like, why would this ever succeed? Or like, all these like, just basically talking yourself out of doing it because you know so much about what works and what doesn't. Was that something that you felt at all?
For sure. I think like I am probably more cynical because I've had so many years in the business where I'm like, oh, I saw like, we were talking about launching a product recently. I was like, so-and-so did that like, 15 years ago, like it's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is nobody remembers anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago, even if you did something, but now you're doing it with a different product philosophy, it could totally be new again.
Yeah.
So, yes, I definitely had that cynicism, but I think the other part that has served me well is I'm like a super optimistic person in general.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's healthy to have a little bit of that cynicism. I think you have to be almost that combination of like Delulu where you're like, I like
feet on the ground, but also just like that optimism is so necessary to break through those barriers.
You have to have some constraints too, right? So I think like for me, it was like, okay, well, we can take some bets, but let's take some bets in a really formulaic way so that like I can manage how much risk I'm taking.
Yeah. So presumably you end up raising some money that you needed.
So we ended up raising some money from
what was that early
friends.
Yeah, what was that early process of getting, the brand going and like product development, all that stuff? And what are some of the challenges maybe at the time that you faced?
I mean, there's challenges the whole way through. And I think that's like the thing that is probably, I don't know if that's shocking for people, but like things have gone really well for us and it's still challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine like if it didn't go well, how I would feel. Early on, the challenges are different than they are today. I liken it a lot to like, I don't think you have kids, right?
Not yet.
If you have, for those of your listeners even who have kids, I do think it's a lot like having children where it's like having a baby is unique in that it is all consuming. They need you so much. It's 100% of, so much of it is your attention. And there are things that you need to do for the baby that like nobody else could do for the baby. And you can hire a babysitter, but like really a lot of it is you.
Mm-hmm.
And then as your kid gets older, which is more, I think where we're starting to go now, like there are things that I'm not going to do as well for the baby. Like I don't know enough. And so I need to hire people in who are smarter and better. I actually, my 15-year-old went to boarding school this year, which was very much that same analogy for me because honestly, like he just needed more in terms of his education and, like, I don't know. So I think it just changes, it shifts. But the thing that you need in the beginning, I think is one thing that's been really important for me is having team. My career has been in companies and with teams. And frankly, like I'm not a genius in isolation. I'm someone who like, even if I have an idea and I thought it was a good idea, I could talk myself out of it on my own.
Right.
I need to like bat it around and be like, what do you think? And have it iterate to get better. Mm-hmm. And so my first 3 employees were girls who had never had jobs before that I kind of met from different ways. One, I spoke at FITM and she DM'd me and afterwards asked for a free internship. One was my husband's coworker's wife, and the other was my nanny. Yeah. Who, like during COVID, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pay you anyway, so you might as well write POs for me. Right. Yeah. But having like early people who believed in what I was doing and wanted to be part of it, I think there's nothing quite like that, especially early on. And I'm so proud to say that those girls are all still with me today.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about from the product product side? Like, did you from the beginning kind of come up with like a line of products that you wanted to offer, and then how was that in terms of? Did you have to like go find a manufacturer and put together the formulations and? Sometimes they have minimums, and like, were you able to meet those? Like, how did all that, like that initial kind of inventory and all that stuff? I think sometimes.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that has been easier for me is that because I've worked in the industry for so long, like I knew And I've worked in small companies. Because I've worked in small companies, I've had visibility into a lot of different things. And even if I don't know how to do it, I've been next to it. So I can kind of, and I have friends that I can call and ask questions to. So I understood like who to go to for which things. And from the very beginning, I worked with a contract manufacturer. I'm not someone I hear about people doing this all the time where they buy stuff from Amazon and they start mixing things. And that's not my path. It's also not my ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked with contract manufacturers from the beginning. I, in general, really believe in deferring to experts. Like, I feel like I'm good at what I'm good at. And then, so even if you're talking about like the National Eczema Association, I don't pretend to know everything about what irritates skin.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather defer to toxicologists and dermatologists and people who study this all the time. Clean is like this undefined, non-toxic thing. So like we work with Credo, we work with Sephora, which are both of our retailers, and they maintain lists of these are all the things you should not pay attention, like not include in your products.
Is there like a stamp of approval from like these like associations that go on these products for like consumers to know?
So Credo, everything inside of Credo has to be clean. Like they won't let you in if it's not, which is, they have a pretty rigorous list. Goop does too. And then at Sephora, they also have a list where they don't allow, and they have seals for all of those things. The National Eczema Association is the most rigorous. So oftentimes the way seals in general work is that they'll give you a list of like, this is how they think about their seal. And then you sign something that says, okay, I promise I won't do that. And then that's kind of it. You pay them some money, you get to use the seal. The National Eczema Association gives you a no-no list. Then you go make your products. Then you have to submit to them not only the ingredients in your products, but a QQ, which is the percentages of everything in it. Then on top of that, you have to third-party test. So we actually do, and actually in the beginning we do something called HRIPT, which is repeat irritation patch testing, and it's on a human. And in the beginning, we were doing 50 people, which is what they originally had asked. I think, is it what they asked for? It is what they asked for in the beginning. We've actually increased it to 100 subjects, and then we do it on people who have sensitive skin.
Mm-hmm.
And then a dermatologist has to look at it.
Got it.
And then on top of that, so we misread the guidelines. We thought it's actually supposed to be one of the tests, but we thought you were supposed to do all of them. And so we've actually spent way more money on testing than we had to.
You're like doing more testing than anything else.
Yeah. So and then now we do something called safety and use. And safety and use is like, not just like putting it on your arm in a small amount, but like safety and use means you're using it at the level that you're using it in actual usage. So like if you're talking about a moisturizer, you're putting it all over your entire face as opposed to just putting like a 2x2 inch square on your arm type thing.
Yeah.
So then you submit all of this data, and then they have their own internal kind of experts that look at it, which is a team of dermatologists, like doctors, toxicologists, et cetera, that they look at it, and then they give you the seal of acceptance. So it's a pain, to be honest with you, and it kind of ekes into our timelines quite a bit. But at the same time, like it makes me feel safer as a brand that this is something I'm putting out into the world, saying like it's not going to irritate your skin. And at the very least, I've taken every precaution I could to make sure that these will work for you. Because I think makeup is this thing where like we want to look more beautiful than when we used it. But the thing you want more than anything is for it to make your skin worse. Right? So if you put something on it, it makes you break out. You're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And like, I mean, let's face it, sometimes whether you're talking about a moisturizer or whatever, you're like, did it work? I mean, I can't really always tell. Depends on your skin type. And if you have great skin already, you're like, whatever. But yeah, that was a huge part of kind of what we did in development and continue to do.
So once you have the product developed, I know your background was in beauty marketing. You obviously have to market it and get it out there so people know what it is and why it's good for them and where they can buy it and all that stuff. So it's like 2018, 19 at this time, pre-COVID. influencer life is thriving, Instagram is thriving.
Well, it is for other people, but
Yeah.
I'm not an influencer, and I'm
Not
still
you,
not
I
an
know, but
influencer.
generally speaking, it was a great time for influencers pre-COVID.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, what did you do initially that kind of got the product out there, and was it pretty quick in terms of people realizing its benefits and starting to really
Yeah.
be repeating customers?
So I think the thing that it did really well, and I think the thing that I think I've done really well in general is I know who I am and I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, right? So the barrier to entry for beauty brands today is actually very low, right? You can go to Makeup LA, which is a trade show. You can find a vendor there. If you want to pick it up exactly as it is, you could launch it real quick. So it's very easy to start a beauty brand today. That said, to scale it, I think is quite hard.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I know that I'm not an influencer. I know that people aren't going to buy these products just because they like me or because I'm doing a get ready with me or something like that. So what I did was I kind of called on the things that I am good at, which is I have a lot of relationships with these retailers that I've built over the years. So for instance, I've worked in the industry for 21 years, but I've worked with Sephora for 21 years.
Okay.
So I always knew that, listen, they say, Sephora likes to say it's actually harder to get into Sephora than it is to get into Harvard. It is so hard to get in.
Based on how many brands try to get in.
So many applicants. So many people have brands. And so I don't think they took me because they just like me.
Right.
I don't think that's what I'm trying to say. But when we launched in April of 2019, and honestly, launching was like an Instagram mood board. It was not even not a lot of fanfare. And I remember being so upset that we were late, and my husband was like, "What are you late for?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is waiting for you."
Right.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
But after we launched, there were maybe 50 people liking our posts. And I had sent an email out to a bunch of contacts being like, I started this brand, blah, blah, blah. And one of those people was this woman, Avril, who was when I was working at my last brand at Josie, she was low on the totem pole early in her career.
At Josie.
At Sephora.
At Sephora.
And then by the time I started my brand, she was the director of clean makeup.
Wow.
And
great contact.
Right. And I could see her. She was one of literally 50 people.
Yeah.
Liking my posts.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. But I hadn't been in touch with her in years. And I just was like, whatever. And we had gone to Credo, which is one of the retailers we're proudly with now. And that woman, Annie Jackson, had been my merchant when I was at Josie too. So I knew her, and she took us from the first meeting. And that was my first entry into retail. And so then I got a little more confident because I was like, wow, that went well.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who worked at Sephora was like, listen, I feel like you should pitch. I'm like, there's no way. I'm too early. I have no proof of concept. I have nothing. Why would they say yes? And she was like, I don't know. I hear them talk about clean a lot. I feel like at least you pitch and you get on their radar. And I'm so glad that I've had these, whether it was that or my friend from business school, I think these moments where somebody gives you that swift kick in the ass where you're they encourage you to dare a little more greatly than you would have on your own, I think are really important.
Yep.
And so then I pitched to Sephora, and I wrote to Avril and I said, hey, I've got this brand. I didn't say, I know you're one of the 50 people liking my post.
Yeah.
And they took Tower 20 immediately, and they took us in all stores, which is.
What was the feedback you got in terms of what, I mean, aside from, if they just did it because they liked you or knew you, is not a great business move on anyone's part, because you're right.
Yeah.
But there was obviously more than that. I
think from the very beginning, the differentiation of the way that we have developed the products and our product promise, we have built a pretty defensive moat in the sense where clean has been this, and I still think this actually, clean in general is just not enough. It's table stakes, right?
Yeah.
So you can make your products clean now, but it's just not enough.
Yep.
The thing I was trying to do was develop clean products, make them in this way that was really safe for sensitive skin, but package it in a way that wasn't making the consumer feel like a patient or like a
clinical type
clinical
of thing.
thing. Because for me, like this is my everyday. Like my eczema is something that I will have forever for the rest of my life, and it still comes up for me. It's just much more controlled than it used to be. And I feel like that about eating too. Like some people have gluten, allergies, or they have dairy allergies. Like I just think there's more today that is like that.
Yep.
And we all have inflammation. And so from the very beginning, it was like, okay, can I do this in a way that is actually like table stakes on the clean? Let's make it safe for sensitive skin. But more importantly, it has to be high performance. It has to really work. I'm friends with so many, for my days at Smashbox, I was friends with so many celebrity makeup artists. So like from the very beginning, I was like, test all of these products. Tell me if they're good. Like use them on set. Let me know if it's working. So I knew that the products could work. And then I think trying to make them like honestly cute, right? Aesthetic. And to your point about what Instagram is and was and is, it has to like look good in a flat lay. It has to be something you can take a photograph of and you can pull out of your purse and feel excited for other people to see it.
Yeah. Obviously having, like you mentioned, like, knowing celebrity makeup artists, and I'm assuming maybe those got eventually to celebrities, and like having their endorsement helps a lot. I'm sure because, they have big followings and like people really like, I guess follow what they say and want to, and trust them to a certain extent. Was that something that just came naturally, or did you like have to really go out there and like get the product?
No, I think I've learned a little bit from every experience I have. So back to like connecting the dots, like when I was working at Smashbox, our tagline was developed by the makeup artists at Smashbox Studios. So that was the way I knew to make products, was that you work with the labs to create it. You look at the market to understand the need gaps in a really analytical way. But then you have to make sure it actually works in practice.
Yeah.
So whether you're talking about shade development, like, listen, it's really important to me that our products work from a diversity and inclusivity perspective, but I'm not touching skin that way. So like, and certainly not the range of skin tones. And so like, it was always important to me from the very beginning that specifically we had that credibility and validation of the makeup artist. And so from the very beginning, we've seeded very strongly in that way. And I think one of the greatest compliments I've been given is a friend of mine told me the other day, they were like, literally, I've never met a celebrity makeup artist that doesn't have something of yours in their kit. Because really early on, it was important to us. Even like our packaging is clear, which the intention of that is like back in the day, like MAC, Bobbi Brown, all of those, everything was black. And if you're a makeup artist, you have to like open it to figure out what's inside. Right. And so like, I thought about it from an artistry perspective, and I'm like, oh, I can see it. I can see what the shades are, and I can just grab them. So, and they also don't take up more room than they need to, because I'm thoughtful about the fact that artists are like on the move and they have to carry these really, really heavy bags. So I was also trying to save money, right? So like, we don't have like a lot of, maybe you don't know this, but a lot of makeup brands do things where they like weight the products to make them feel more expensive, or they have like overshell caps or like false bottoms, things that make the product look bigger.
Right. But it's like somewhat borderline deceptive, or not really?
Yeah. I mean, we talk like something we talk about in beauty a lot is like value perception, right? Because you want to feel, you're going to charge $85 for your mask, like your lotion or whatever, which ours is like 28. But if you're doing that, you want it to feel like a luxury experience. And so part of that is size impression. Part of that is the way that you decorate it. And I wanted to play a different game. I was like, I want you to be able to shop at Sephora. I want you to be able to have a premium prestige experience and like walk out with your little black and white bag. But I want to be able to do it for all different ages, all different, economic levels. And so like our lip gloss is $16 as opposed to, I would say the average is probably like 26.
And are those brands that are charging that much more, are they some like these huge brands that everyone knows, like that have been around? Is it just because they're just leaning on their brand name, or because for someone who's like an upstart, like the margins might you're kind of obviously cutting into your margins that way, but it's possible is what you're saying. It's possible for.
Well, I think we're making different decisions, right? So I have worked at brands. Kate Somerville was a really prestige brand that was charging quite literally $65 to $85 for a cream, more in some cases. But they were also like, if you look at the box, they were like embossing it, they were debossing it, they were adding foil to it. They have different costs of goods than I do. Right. So my cost of goods are much more like they print on both sides of the carton. I only print on one side of the carton.
Yeah.
And so there are things that you can do to control costs, but does the consumer feel it? Maybe. Like I am kind of like, I believe that design is not something that should be only for, it could be democratized, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the choices I make are like, okay, well, I think I can make great design and an amazing product, but the way that I forego and the way that I save is I do stock packaging. So I'm not doing, which is harder, right? Like the packaging I do, somebody else could come around and do it because I do like basically circles and squares where a lot of people can do circles and squares. But like you look at like Fenty from Rihanna or like Rare by Selena, they have like they own shapes custom tooling that you can look at immediately and it belongs to them.
Right.
But that's expensive.
Oh yeah.
And they have to, and you financially have to pass that on to your customer in some way. And so for me, I was like, I can spend as much as everyone else does on the stuff on the inside. So like the goop is the same, but then the stuff around it that packages it, I save money on.
It's awesome. You have a product, the X1 SOS spray, which sells every 15 seconds, which is like 4 a minute.
Yeah, I think it actually might be even faster now.
More than that. It's like what is that? 240 per hour.
It's
wow.
It's good.
How does it, that's crazy. How does it sell that much? Like,
so our SOS Daily Rescue facial spray is our number one selling product. It has an ingredient in it called hypochlorous acid. Hypochlorous acid has been used for honestly centuries, but used in hospital settings for wound care. It has not been used commercially, and we were the first people to use. It has been used commercially in some instances, but like we were the first people to use it specifically for facial use. We worked with a lab that has perfected. So the problem it hasn't been commercialized earlier is because it's actually pretty an unstable ingredient. So it's pretty fickle. Where like it can lose its potency really fast.
Got it.
And so I have a friend who is a doctor. She's a plastic surgeon, and she literally is taking hypochlorous acid, not ours, because ours is not a medical grade, but she's like pouring it into your skin or into your body while she's doing surgery. So she's irrigating with it.
Wow.
The reason why hypochlorous acid is so powerful is because it is both an antibacterial and an anti-inflammatory. So again, back to the conversation around skin, if you have any inflammation on your skin, whether you're talking about acne, sunburn, honestly, even like sweat is a toxin that sits on your skin. The two things you want to do are to neutralize it. So which is the anti-inflammatory part. You want to like keep it calm and bring it back to like normal. But the thing you really want to do is you want to make sure that you're not exacerbating the problem with bacteria. So like if you think about like, say, acne, the thing that makes your acne a lot worse is if it gets bacteria and then it kind of makes it spread. The thing with eczema is if you like scratch it, oftentimes you're doing it with your hands or your nails that are kind of dirty, and that makes it spread and makes it worse. And so this is such a great and efficacious antibacterial, anti-inflammatory that it works for a myriad of different use cases. So for me, it's eczema. For other people, it might be honestly just like redness. I know people, I've heard the craziest stories about people who have like, they've had like razor burn for like, you know, you've seen these people who like, a friend of mine's husband has just always had a red neck. Like he just persistently has had this red neck and started using our products and it went away. Or like a piercing or a tattoo. Or we actually do a lot of things to our skin that are pretty invasive. I mean, lasers, there's so many different things.
Right.
This product for us became really popular because during COVID, people started wearing masks, obviously. And when you're wearing a mask, you're still talking, you're still eating. And that saliva can create bacteria on your skin, and people were getting maskne. And
Wow.
so very genuinely, people were like, okay, wait, I'm going to start
maskne?
acne coming from the mask.
Wow.
Right. And so then people started spraying it,
Yeah.
and they were finding that it made such a difference, or like
Right.
going on an airplane where you're just in that kind of circulated air. So it really is this product that has done well based on both a combination of like word of mouth, and then also because it really does work. Like if you look at our before and afters on our P pages or whatever, like those are from our community. Those are not third party.
Yep.
Like we sent them to someone. It's like people would tag us, and then we would say like, oh my God, can we share this? I'll send you another SOS if you let me share it. And then they would say yes. And that's how we got our before and afters. But it really is a product that just genuinely works.
Wow. Where does the name Tower 28 come from? What does it mean?
It's a real lifeguard tower at the intersection of Santa Monica and Venice.
Okay.
So the lifeguard towers in LA are numbered.
Yep.
28 is the one that I've always gone to with my friends. And so very genuinely one day, I don't know if you've tried to name anything, but like,
oh yeah, I mean this podcast, just a lot of things. Yeah,
it's really hard to name,
but I love the process. I just enjoy it, the naming process.
You don't like it? It's so hard. No, it's still hard for naming products too, because if you want to get the trademark,
Instagram handle, the website
handles, domains, all these things, it's quite hard. And I had one name, couldn't get the trademark, and as we were going through it, a friend of mine sent me a text, and she was like, hey, we're all going to the beach. Meet me at Tower 28. And I was like, wait a minute. Is that the name? Because lifeguard towers are symbols of safety, right? Which is what I want our products to be, like a symbol of safety. They're also, to me, I really wanted to make products that were for everyone. So I wanted, like, I think it's changing a little bit, but before, if you wanted a product to be clean, it just automatically meant it was really expensive. And probably not formulated for a wide range of skin tones or types. And so I really wanted this to be like for everyone. And I feel like the beach is the symbol of a place where everybody gets to go and enjoy a clean and healthy lifestyle.
Yep.
So that's why Tower 28.
Yeah. Hopefully we could keep the beaches a little cleaner though in LA.
I mean, it's funny you say that. We actually, we work a lot with Heal the Bay, which shout out to Heal the Bay. I think they do such a great job of keeping our oceans clean. They were actually part of the forefront of kind of getting rid of the plastic bags in Los Angeles. And so we work a lot with them in terms of not only donating money, which is important, but we also donate time. And then we work with them a lot to figure out like what we can be doing to be more sustainable. So we make all of our products with a minimum of 50% recycled plastic up to 100%.
What is like the future of the brand look like? What do you kind of hope long term to do? Like, just is it kind of just keeping up with what new products and things like that, or are there other things? I guess it also matters like how the beauty industry as a whole is evolving. But
well, I'll answer that in two parts. So back to even something you had said earlier about like kind of figuring out your why or what it is that you're doing this for, or almost like you were talking about your personal glass ceiling.
Right.
I think I'm actually on the other end of that spectrum now, where I'm thinking really long term about like, what is it that I really want? I started this company thinking that my goal was to make as much money as I was making at my last job, and to control my life, like to just have a little more control over my day and my time. And arguably, I've done that part. Now, what I think about is I really genuinely feel like I'm in a unique and privileged position to, I may not be able to change. I cannot change a lot of things in this world, right? Like I'm not influential enough. I'm not powerful enough. But the beauty industry, because I've spent so much time in it and because I know so many important people in it and whatnot, I actually do think that I could uniquely make the beauty industry better because of the fact that I am so connected in it. And so what I would like to do at this point is really help bring together kind of the unheard voices of today and make them the leaders of tomorrow, because I do think it is very easy to get into the industry. It is very difficult to scale and be successful.
Yep.
And I think coming into this as a young person, I didn't see myself in the images of beauty and aspiration that were put in front of me, right? I grew up Asian American in a time when like there weren't people that looked like me. Everybody was like blonde and like certainly in beach imagery, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so I think we have a unique responsibility of defining what beauty looks like and making it something that you can see yourself in. And the only way to do that is if you can put people in a leadership position that are different and varied.
Yep.
Right. So I think long term, that is my bigger thing. I have like an education and mentorship program called Clean Beauty Summer School. I'm part of Sephora Accelerate, where I teach and mentor as well, which I think is an amazing program. So I think that's kind of bigger picture, what I'm trying to do. Also with my own team, right? Like I'm trying to hopefully bring up the leaders of tomorrow. And then at the same time, I think there's like the thing that I'm looking to do like this year and next year, which is just honestly like keep up with the growth and expansion. Again, it's like having a child. Like my child is now closer to being like in middle school than it is to being, in preschool at this point. And so I'm like, okay, well, I need to find it the best like teachers it needs. I need to figure out like, so I'm growing the team. I'm increasing distribution. We're going into Australia for the first time this year. We're going into, we'll probably launch Sephora UK next year. We're going into larger footprints at Sephora. So a lot of it is like just growth and distribution, whether you're talking about products, retail, distribution, team, etc.
Awesome. Well, Amy, this has been such a pleasure. I feel like I would love to just sit and chat all day, but I know we both have stuff to do, and this has been just an incredible kind of like hearing your story of where you came from, and really like having this experience in an industry, but then going and building a successful brand in the industry, which I think a lot of people kind of like gloss over of, that how much that helps, how much it helps to like, earn your stripes and like go out there and like really work hard and get some experience in something. And hopefully it's something like an industry that you enjoy and are passionate about to eventually go out and really try to change, right, for the better. And so this has been a wonderful
thanks.
conversation.
I appreciate you saying that. I also think we as a society glamorize being successful at a young age in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And I think there's nothing wrong with doing that, and more power to those people who are able to do it. But I also think on the flip side of that, like if I can be, I don't know, hopefully an inspiration to other people in some ways, to me, it's like as a woman of color, a working mom, a woman who was 40 and now plus, who like just kind of kept trying to figure out what it is. Like I think a lot of people, I have friends my age who are like, oh, it's too late for me to, I've already made so many decisions. It's too late for me to go and do something. And arguably, like, it is probably too late for me to become a doctor or do something that takes a lot of training.
Yeah.
But there are so many things that you can still do. And I really just feel like it's never too late to be happy.
I totally agree. Amy, this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.